Hey there, Raelan here. I thought today I would share a bit about my journey with running because before I got sick with chronic fatigue syndrome, I used to be an avid runner. But then when I became unwell, I lost my ability to run completely and I wasn't able to run again for years. But eventually I was able to get it back. It wasn't easy, but I found a way. I put together a system for myself that ended up working that got me back to running just as much as I was before I got sick. But while I had chronic fatigue syndrome, if someone had asked me to run, it's almost like they might as well have been asking me to grow wings and start to fly. It just felt so far outside of the realm of possibility of what my body was capable of doing, which was a particularly challenging thing for me to accept because before I got sick, I was running almost every day. I was running 5 to 6 days a week. I got up very early and before I went to work, and then sometimes on the weekend, I would run 10 kilometers. And I did this in the winter in my basement on my treadmill that I used religiously. And then when the weather was permitting, I would go outside, which in Canada is about 20 minutes a year. So when I lost the ability to run, I missed it. Running had been a part of my identity, a part of my enjoyment, a part of my stress release, and just so many different things. So not being able to run and seeing people around me who were able to and talking about it, it was a really tough thing. But not only did I miss running as a leisure activity or, stress release, I missed just being able to rely on my body like that. I remember being on vacation one time with my husband, Jeffrey, and this was obviously when I was somewhat recovered, so I could travel and I could do different things, but I still struggled. It was still all very difficult for me. And we had a connecting flight, and our first flight had been late, so we only had a few minutes to catch our next flight, which meant we had to run through the airport or we were going to miss it and be stuck there for who knows how long. So we started running and very quickly I realized that I could not run very much. So I told Jeffrey to go ahead, like, please just hold the plane and I'll get there as fast as I can. And then I just ran as hard as I could. I'd run, I'd walk for a bit, I'd run, I'd walk for a bit. And not only did it suck, not being able to rely on my body for such a simple thing, like just to get to the gate and just feeling a bit sad and pathetic, even though it wasn't my fault, but that I was so far behind him and that I just couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I was so scared because I was pushing myself hard in that moment. I'm like, what is this going to do to my body? What kind of a price am I going to pay for pushing myself to try and run through this airport? But I was even more afraid of missing the flight. So I guess it was the lesser of two evils in that moment. So yes, for many years, no running. Now, I did do some walking, and I suspect I don't give enough credit to walking in my recovery journey because overall it didn't seem to do wonders for me for getting my health back. But when I look back, I think initially it probably did help some. But over time, I found that with walking, I plateaued. It only really ever got me so far, and it never seemed like it was going to get me or help to get me fully out of this. So I think it's helpful, but for me, it wasn't enough to get me fully out of this. But I know other people have had great success with their recovery journeys from ME/CFS by using walking. So we're each a bit different, and we each have to, use our intuition, listen to our bodies, do what's right for us. So here's how I was able to start running again. And for me, there were 3 steps or phases to this process of getting myself fully back to being able to run again as much as I could before I got sick. And the first step of this was actually strength training. Even when I was working really hard on my recovery at the end of my journey, because I'd been sick for many years, and then for a couple years at the end, I really cracked down and focused on getting well. I did not feel like running or anything cardio related was going to be a good thing for me. My body didn't feel like it could handle it, and it felt like it was going to be too damaging. And any attempts that I had made to try cardio type activities only seemed to set me back. So my first step in being able to run again was actually just to focus on strength training for quite a long time. And I did this very gradually. I know I've talked about this in quite a few other videos. I started with 1 minute a day and slowly built up. Each week I'd add on another minute. First, I was just doing, body weight exercises. Eventually, I progressed and made it to the weight room at the gym, and I kept this up for about a year. And after about a year, I was able to do hour-long strength training workouts multiple times a week with no problem. So this was step 1 for me. I needed to build my body back up, and I needed to build some strength before I could attempt something as intense as running. So once I'd built up some strength, I felt ready to take on running, and I was really excited to start running again. And I didn't feel like I was going to feel fully recovered until I could run again, because that's where I was before I got sick. And I still couldn't do that running. So for me, it was important to build up that ability again so I could feel like I fully had my life back. So after that first phase of building up my strength, my next step was to start a program that I created for myself that I called Ratio Running. And when I started this Ratio Running program, I initially put my strength training sessions on hold because I didn't want to overtax or overburden my body. So initially I was just focusing on the ratio running, and then I slowly brought back in my strength training until I could feel that I could manage both. So my ratio running program was 30-minute sessions that I did 3 times a week. Now, not 30 minutes of running, but 30 minutes 3 times a week that I devoted to slowly building back up my ability to run. And this time I did it all outdoors because after growing up in Canada and not having a lot of ability to run outside, now living in San Francisco and the weather mostly supports being outside, I 100% did it outdoors. Plus, I liked the added bonus of being able to get some sun while I was doing my running. What it is here though is hilly. So I went out of my way to make sure I was only running on flat terrain because I didn't want to overstress my body or overburden it in any way. So for my 30-minute ratio running session, it looked like this. I would head out with my phone in my hand. I have one of these pop-up sockets, so it's easy to hold on to it and be active and not lose your grip. And I would set the timer on my phone for 30 minutes. And then I would head out in my flat stretch of San Francisco, and I would keep glancing at my timer to follow a pattern, a ratio. And I started with 9 minutes walking, 1 minute running, and then I'd repeat. So walk 9 minutes, run 1 minute, walk 9 minutes, run 1 minute, walk 9 minutes, run 1 minute, done. So I have my 30 minutes done, and I've only ran a total of 3 minutes with big gaps in between for my body to rest and relax. And I didn't push myself hard. I wasn't concerned about the speed of either my walking or my running. I went as slow as I felt like it. The point was just to follow that ratio and stick to it and finish off my 30 minutes. And then every week I upped that ratio by 1 minute. So week 2, I went out and I would walk 8 minutes, run 1, walk 8, run 1, and keep doing that until my 30 minutes was done. So week 2, now I was running a total each session of about 3.5 minutes or something. So it really had only increased by a very small amount, but it was increasing. So then week 3, I upped it again, walk for 7 minutes, run 1, walk 7, run 1. Keep this up for 30 minutes. Now I'm running about 4 minutes. So a very gradual, gentle, slowly increasing program to build up my cardiovascular endurance. So on and on, week after week, this is how it went. I kept to 30 minutes every single time. And week 5, I was walking 6, running 1, repeat. Week 6, walk 5, run 1. Week 7, walk 4, run 1. Week 8, walk 3, run 1. Week 9, walk 2, run 1. Until I got to week 10, where my ratio was at walk 1 minute, run 1 minute, repeat. So I was going back and forth with 1 minute intervals for my 30 minutes, running a total of 15 minutes per session. So I was feeling pretty good about this when I got to this point. And this was an exciting point in my journey because the next week, this is when that ratio flipped. So all of a sudden now I was doing more running than I was walking. So now my ratio was walk 1 minute, run 2 minutes, walk 1 minute, run 2 minutes, and keep that up for 30 minutes. And throughout this whole time, still not pushing myself with speed, still not worrying about how fast or slow that I was going. My most important thing was just to be cautious and to not do damage. And I didn't care about the stats. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I was just happy to be running at all, even when 3/4 of it was walking. It was just such a joyous thing for me to be out there doing any kind of running. And I called it all running. Every time I went, even when I was only running 3 minutes of that 30 minutes, like I'm going for my run, it just felt good to be getting back that identity of a runner. And the feeling of running even 3 minutes just felt like freedom. There's something about running to me that just feels strong and free and just really, really an amazing thing. And I kept going with this program until I was able to run 30 minutes straight. So week 12, walk 1 minute, run 3. Week 13, walk 1 minute, run 4. Week 14, walk 1, run 5, and so on, until I got to week 18, where I was walking 1 minute and running 9, which was another super exciting milestone for me because it was the complete opposite of where I started. Because I started with walking 9 minutes, running 1, and now I was running 9 minutes and walking 1. And that meant out of my 30-minute session, I was running 27 minutes of that 30 minutes. So that was a super exciting place to get to. So it took me about 18 weeks to get to that point where I was running 27 of my 30 minutes, or about 4 months-ish. And then at this point, I just took the leap and I cut out the walking altogether. So the next week I went and I just started running the full 30 minutes. And I kept this up for a little while, and then I slowly started pushing myself tiny bits to get my speed up, I'd use apps on my phone that tracked how fast that I was going. The one that I use the most is the Under Armour app, which I found quite good, tracks your distance, and a whole bunch of other stats. So perhaps I could have built this up faster. Perhaps other people wouldn't need 4 months to get to this point. But for me, it felt like a comfortable pace, and not doing damage was always the most important thing. And it was just very exciting to do it. It was just very exciting to get back those runs like I used to be able to do. And I'm not running marathons now, but I never was. And it's not my goal now. I used to have a bit of an issue with over-exercising and exercise addiction. So now I don't set extraordinary goals, fitness goals for myself anymore. I have ambitious fitness goals, but nothing really over the top. So I don't see any marathons in my future. I did eventually run a 10K as a part of the San Francisco Marathon, but it was just more symbolic for me because I was running 10 kilometers before. So I just wanted one, official 10K run that I did to really show myself that I was really fully back. And the ratio system worked really well for me because one, it kept me from pushing myself too hard. When I had this system to follow, I was never tempted to try and do anything extreme one week. It kept me at a very slow, gradual, slowly increasing pace. But the other thing it did is it actually ensured that I was always pushing myself a little bit, because sometimes time can pass and we might not realize that we're actually not making a lot of improvement. So even though it was very small increases each week, it did ensure that I was always upping it and always building up my cardio endurance and always getting a little bit stronger. And then step 3, or phase 3 of this journey for me, has been switching to what I call intuitive running. So I threw out the numbers, I threw out even the tracking system. I no longer use any apps to see how fast I'm going or how far I'm going. And now it's all about just listening to my body, because I want to make sure that I don't fall back into any old habits or patterns of where I'm pushing myself too hard and wearing myself out. Extreme exercise is not a goal for myself right now. So the intuitive running system means that I go out with no set plan. I'm not saying to myself, I'm going to run 10 kilometers, or I'm going to run an hour, or I'm going to run to this destination, this landmark, and back. I just go out and I just go with it, and I see how I feel. And some days my body feels really tired, so I actually walk most of it, and that's okay. Or I might not go very far, and then I turn around and I come home after a pretty short amount of time. Or some days I go out and I feel like running for miles, so I do that. So I just see how I'm feeling in that day, and that's what I do. And I know not everybody's a runner. I know not everyone has interest in running specifically, but I think, at least for me, it was really important to include this as part of my chronic fatigue syndrome recovery process, because not only did it give me back that identity and feeling of freedom and the satisfaction of, yay, I can run again, but it also opened up just what felt like more total freedom in my life. So, if Jeffrey and I are out sightseeing and we get to some spot with the sign that says 300 steps up to the scenic point, now I know I can do it, no problem. I'm not worried, I'm not scared. I know that my body is strong and I will get up there just fine. Whereas in the past, I would have just sent him up because I wouldn't want him to miss out. And I'd sit at the bottom and I'd say, take some photos. Let me know how it was. And we can have much more active hobbies now. We go hiking now, and I know that my body is strong and it can manage it. It has the endurance to do it. And it's kind of exciting because I'm used to kind of always being the runt of the group for a very long time now because of my health problems. And now I see myself outpacing other people. Sometimes He's probably not going to like me sharing this one publicly, but sometimes I'm outpacing Jeffrey. We'll be walking and I'll see him and he's like huffing and puffing and red and having trouble keeping up a conversation. And I'm walking, my heart rate isn't even elevated, I'm not out of breath, and I can talk just fine. And of course I want him and everyone else to be in great shape also. It's just a nice feeling for myself to not 100% of the time be the person who's struggling the most. So I can do things, I have confidence in my body, I feel like I have full freedom in life to go out and do all the things that I want to do, and there's no barriers and there's nothing, that's holding me back. And I think the most important message, if I could put out anything in this video, would be that I know there's still a lot of people that believe that recovery from chronic fatigue syndrome or ME, CFS is impossible. And I think it's important to get these stories out there because I went from being extremely sick. At my worst times, I was mostly couch-bound and bed-bound and house-bound and just very, very ill, to the point where I am now, where I can do virtually anything that I want. And I don't think my story is special or unique. It's just my story. And I believe that if I can get past this, I believe that others can too. So if you too are facing this, I am wishing you all the best. And there is absolutely hope. So many people are getting past chronic fatigue syndrome and ME and similar chronic conditions. And I'm working so hard to get as many of those stories out there as I can. So hang in there, you've got this. And if you're interested in learning more about my journey, I'll link a video above that shares the top 10 things that helped me to fully get past chronic fatigue syndrome, along with the 3 things that if I could go back, I would do differently. That's it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.